Jeff, all it took was winning 9 games out of 10 and winning one on the road against a division rival, and now you get to play another division rival, but somehow, some way, here they are. What are you thinking?
Oh man, what a great finish, man, to a really incredible end of the season. I mean, you get to go down to Tennessee, and really the game should have been easier than it turned out. I mean, they ended up hurting themselves a little bit, but man, they played really good football to go down. I thought physically they just dominated the Titans, and that's what you like to see as you're heading into the playoffs, is that physically you matched up well. You handled your business. There's areas you can improve on. Obviously, in penalties you can improve, not turning it over late in the first half, for the pick six, that kind of stuff. So even with that type of victory, you go in knowing, man, we play a little bit better. Look how good we'll be. But they have to be so thrilled. From 1-5 to making the playoffs, I know I'm pumped up for them, man. Just an incredible, improbable run, but an incredible run to watch.
Jeff, Chris Ballard was very honest in saying that he felt like at times last year he was embarrassed watching his team play in the trenches, especially in the division. And I thought it was very fitting last night in the rain against a team that is built, to embrace those elements. It was the Colts putting away the Titans, clinching their playoff berth with their play in the trenches. What has impressed you most this year about the play of the offensive and defensive lines for the Colts?
Yeah, I think the physicality and the attitude that they play with. And I think that when you look at the Colts offensive line this year, the addition of Smith and Q Nelson, obviously, just the physicality and the violence, really, that they, for lack of a better word, that they play with up front. They want guys on the ground. They're going to be physical. They're going to finish. They're going to play to, it's all cliche, but to the echo of the whistle. They're going to get there and really impose their will. And what that does, I think, is you flip it over. You practice against that every day. And defensive line-wise, you see the same thing, really the front seven. I mean, those guys are coming downhill. Darius Leonard, how effective he's been tackling. They're very sure tacklers on the other side. And I agree with Ballard. I think that you see a complete shift in culture and in mentality. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Last year you would look at some games and think, man, you just shake your head at it. This year, even in games they've lost, you haven't felt like that they just kind of, they will have made mistakes and lost, but they haven't been physically just manhandled. And you go away understanding we play a little better. We're going to give give ourselves a shot to win. That's what they've done. And you're seeing a team grow in confidence each week, including, like you said, last night, elements don't matter anymore. If we got to run it, we'll run it. We can play action. We'll max protect and let a couple receivers get out. Andrew's going to find the open guy in the middle when it happens. All those boxes get checked, man. That travels in the NFL and wins you games in December, January, and February.
This is going to sound like an obvious question, but I want you to get technical with us a little bit and kind of maybe take us through it. Why has the run game become so effective for this team? I mean, I know it's the offensive line, but explain to me how it's happening.
Well, you're seeing so they do a really good job. They'll bring in what you would consider run-style looks, right? So they'll bring tight ends. Instead of having them spread out, they'll bring everybody kind of in tight, right? Even receivers, you'll have kind of tight sets. They can put the wham on where the line's going to block a certain direction and the tight end's going to come in and block down, or they'll cross motion them and have them kick out. They'll lead with power and they'll get downhill behind pulling guards. And what happens is they can do that on the passing game, and you see them. They run trap pass more than anybody I've seen in the league, which means they pull a guard and it looks the exact same. Well, when defensive linemen and linebackers can't decide and differentiate between whether you're coming downhill at them or you're throwing, they're always a second late. And so they do a really good job of making sure that all of their tight end, their passes, and their run game are oiled right, and they're in sync. And you're watching, I'm telling you, I watch linebackers and defensive linemen, and they take that first step, and then they have to put their eyes up to read if it is a run or if it is a pass. It makes them a step slow. And the Colts offensive line and their receivers are taking advantage of those things. You're seeing guys peek in the backfield and try to make plays on Andrew, which lets guys get behind him. Listen, Frank Reich doesn't get nearly enough credit of what happened last year in Philadelphia, but you're seeing how effective his game management and his style is. I'm telling you, it is tough to differentiate the two, and that's made their run game so effective and physical because those guys, they're doing the same thing. You know what I mean? It's not – you're not trying to be a pass-happy team or a run. It's a really well-balanced offense. Man, it looks fantastic.
Jeff, before the year started, I laid out a blueprint to how this team could be in the playoffs, and it was improved coaching, the return of Andrew Luck, more defensive playmaking, better protection, and weapons not named T.Y. Hilton stepping up. Is there one or two things off that list? The better coaching, Luck, the defense getting it done, guys besides Hilton making plays, and better protection. Is there one or two things out of that 5-point list that really stands out to you on why this team clinched the final playoff berth in the AFC?
There's actually a few. I would say going away from T.Y. Hilton, Ebron, listen, what he has done at the tight end position has been nothing short of miraculous, really. I mean, when you look at how many touchdowns, how productive he's been, the type of season that he's had in the middle of the field has been spectacular. And what that does for an offense, so many times you see guys making plays between the hash and the numbers. He can get inside even of that, which really puts defenses in a big bind. It makes you cover the entire field from sideline to sideline. Andrew Luck, his process, in my opinion, has really been what has been significantly different, in my opinion. He puts that foot in the ground, the ball's coming out. He understands where to go with the ball. I don't know if you remember, we talked about that coming out of preseason. I said, listen, this is a Peyton Manning run offense, right, with Frank and everybody else. They understand the ball getting out is the most important. And he has really learned that process of if it's not there, throw it away. It doesn't have to be I have to hold the ball for 5 seconds. If it's not there, we'll live to play the next play. He's bought into that, and he has learned where to put the ball, kind of how to throw guys open and not necessarily wait for guys to get open. Obviously, the protection for him has been a big deal for me. And then flip it over. I think, to me, the biggest difference is the defense has been surprising. And people may have, in Indy may have thought that. I have been shocked at how good this defense has played because they are not built to play this 4-3 Tampa 2. And what Ballard and Frank and what everybody has done has been a fantastic job coaching because they've won games. I mean, we can talk about Andrew Luck and the line and all that kind of stuff, but they have won games. They have shut out really good run football teams. Go from Saquon Barkley to Ezekiel Elliott, and then even last night, I know he almost had 100 yards, but they take away the most important thing, that's shutting the run game down. Those things win games, and they've trusted the process. If that's what it looks like, each guy has bought in, and it's made this team so much fun to watch.
Jeff, we talked a lot about offense and the blueprint for getting this team into the postseason and how they've won 9 out of the last 10 a little while ago. Let's talk a little bit more about the defense. Boy, over the last 2 weeks, if the national media and the national football fan didn't know about Darius Leonard, they sure know about him now, especially after last night. You're there in Bristol. How much buzz is this Colts defense and Darius Leonard getting right now as they sneak into the playoffs?
Well, I can tell you, I've been beating the drum. I mean, this guy, listen, this guy should be the defensive rookie of the year beyond a shadow of a doubt. Should have been in the Pro Bowl. How he's not, you scratch your head. He has been such a dominant player, whether it's tackling, sacks, pass defended, caused fumbles, like just every box on defense that you can check, and then you turn around and say everybody else around him is better because of how he plays, and that's the reality of him. You watch this guy diagnose plays. He gets to holes that he shouldn't get to, or to make plays that you scratch your head and say, man, he must have diagnosed something well before everybody else. And I think when you have a guy on that side of the field who becomes the dude, for lack of a better term, he is the dude. Everybody understands if a play needs to be made, he's going to make that play. Everybody else around you has that freedom, and so you're watching at every level guys get better and trust each other and trust the process of having a better defense because of one guy, that being Darius. I mean, this guy, I'm telling you, I have turned tapes on and just shaking my head thinking, I can't believe this guy's making the plays he is. As a rookie, especially because to diagnose where offenses are going, personnel, formations, all that thing, it's like he's reading guys' mail.
Jeff, looking ahead to Saturday, 4:35 kickoff, the rubber match down there in Houston. A couple keys that stand out to you.
Deshaun Watson, you're just watching him extend so many plays with his legs. I think understanding what he will hold the ball. You know what I mean? He's not a guy that they give a ton of sacks, and not necessarily because of their offensive line, but because Deshaun will hold the ball, trying to create that big play behind it. If the Colts do a good job, again, of keeping it in front of them, understanding, you're going to give up completions, you're going to give up some of that stuff. They're going to move the ball because that's what your defense allows, but not allowing the big play where he gets out of the pocket and somebody gets behind you, and the next thing you know, it's a touchdown. I think that, to me, has got to be their mentality of keep him corralled, keep him in the pocket, make him stay in the pocket, force him to stay in there and get uncomfortable within it, not break and contain where he can kind of buy time and make those spectacular plays. On the other side, this O-line, D-line, it's going to be the matchup of the weekend. In all honesty, you're looking at Watt and Clowney, Merciless. You keep going through this group. Can our young guys meet that intensity and go play down there when it's all on the line? That's going to be where you smile. For a guy like me, when you're watching that trench, in the trenches, what that type of matchup's going to be, I couldn't be more fired up to watch that.
It's the morning after on FM 107.5, 1070 The Fan. We're talking to Jeff Saturday. It's all brought to you in part by More Restoration. All right, we've been talking wine and roses for the last hour and a half. Let's get down to brass tacks, though. There were a lot of ugly things that happened in that game last night, in the second and third quarter specifically. How do the Colts go back to work today and start fixing the mental errors and the penalties and even Andrew Luck had one or two moments where you're like, dude, what was going on there? How do they go about fixing that now?
Yeah, some flashbacks, right? You can't be backed up on your own side and try to throw that ball late that gives away 6 points. I mean, to your point, the Titans they kept them in the game a little bit by the way they played, and you can't have that many penalties for that much yardage. And think you're going to beat a good football team in the playoffs. You have to be much more disciplined. I think for me, I group penalties kind of into two different categories, right? Ones that are happening during the play, those are ones you kind of got to learn to live with. You're going to get the occasional holding call on the offensive line because of the style they play. They're going to have some big runs that get called back or some good plays get called back because of what they play. But it's the illegal formation, the illegal shifts, the jumping off sides, like when Luck's going to be in the pocket and not be on time. You can't do those things. And when I'm sure as Frank's sitting down and addressing them, he's letting each of them know in their own way. This isn't what we can live with. We can live with the ones because you're going to get 4 or 5 a game that you kind of understand are going to happen, but you better understand protecting against penalties is the same as protecting against turnovers, because when you get backed up and it's 3rd and 20, there are no plays for 3rd and 20. Everybody knows that, right? There's no good call for 3rd and 15. So you better stay in sync with your offense, in sync with your defense. Don't give away hidden yardage that'll ultimately cost you games in the playoffs.
Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot here. 32 teams down to 12. And who will be the 2 playing in Atlanta for Super Bowl 53?
Oh, man. Listen, I'm going to say I feel pretty good. I like the Saints out of the NFC. I think going through New Orleans is going to be a tough deal for everybody. I like Chicago. I like the way they play on the NFC side. I think that travels well. But I just think the Saints going there is going to be kind of the one to keep your eye on. Honestly, I don't feel great. I think the Ravens and the Colts are probably the 2 scariest teams in my opinion, because they're the most balanced of the AFC. I mean, you look at the Chiefs and they can hang up a whole bunch of points, which is true. But in the weather in Kansas City, and all of a sudden, things aren't quite as good. Some guys drop the ball, or they can't run it quite as well. That defense in KC kind of makes me nervous. So I would say that people. Last night, I can tell you this: people did not want to see the Ravens get in, and they didn't want to see the Colts get in. Both of those teams because of the style of play that they've been over the last 10 weeks or so. It's just one of those things where you shake your head, and in the NFL, it's not about your record. It's about who's getting hot at the right time. And I think both the Colts and the Ravens, to me, look at it, you shake your head going, man, I hope that's not the draw we get.
All right, last thing from me, Rookie of the Year. Darius Leonard or anybody else? I'm not talking about defensive Rookie of the Year. Like, who should be the Rookie of the Year in the NFL?
Well, I mean, here's the hard part. Everybody talks about quarterbacks, so everybody's gonna go with Mayfield because he just breaks the record yesterday, and you're looking at that. In my opinion, you look at like Lamar Jackson, what he's done in Baltimore. People get caught up in numbers and stats. I mean, that guy has played good football. What they ask him to do, he's doing it exceptionally well. And everybody wants to compare him all, from a quarterback. I don't care about it. I care about football players and wins. So you look at that, and like you said, Darius Leonard. How about Q Nelson, man? If you want to talk about guys who have impacted the game every week. Those are true impact players, but they'll never get discussed. And we all know, listen, it's not fair, but it is what it is. They're gonna give it probably to Mayfield and say, hey, he's the guy because he's gotten the most attention. I can tell you this: if I'm Chris Ballard, I'm patting myself on the back. Whether it's Brady, whether it's Smith, whether it's Nelson, whether it's Leonard, you got 3 rookies on your team that you would go, wow. All 3 have played above expectations. Q Nelson and Leonard, in my opinion, should be in the conversation of Rookie of the Year, but I think they'll give it to Mayfield.
You're the best, Jeff. We'll be looking for you on ESPN a little bit later today, and we will talk to you. We'll just keep this train rolling, okay?
Let's do it, brother. Take it all the way through February.